Hey everyone, it's Alex. This is the second video in my series about barriers to getting and staying in good counseling and mental health treatment. So, last time I talked about bad experiences, sometimes being a barrier. Go and check out that vlog if you haven't seen it already. Today's is going to be about money, cost, right? So this is something that I know a lot of people struggle with, the cost of seeing a counselor, the cost of, seeing a counselor on a regular basis can be a real barrier for people. So I'm going to talk you through briefly some of the different options that you might not be aware of that can help you with this. So most of you probably know that Medicare have a program where if you get a GP referral, you can see an accredited psychologist or social worker or OT, a Medicare accredited professional for psychological counseling. Okay, so the way that works currently in 2019 is that you go to your GP or any GP and you say, okay, here's what's happening. I'd really like to get some counseling. They do what's called a Better Access mental health care plan that basically just outlines, okay, what are the issues? And they do a little referral letter and you take that with you to your first session or you send it to your counselor before your first session in order to get the Medicare rebate, okay? So you can get 10 sessions of counseling per calendar year, so January to December. You can get up to 10 sessions where Medicare will pay for part of your counseling. Initially, your GP can refer you for 6 sessions, and then if you want the additional 4, you just go back and ask for the additional 4, and your counsellor writes a little letter. So the important things to understand about this program, the Better Access program, okay, you do need to have the GP referral, and obviously there might be a cost associated with going to see your GP to get the referral. Although I do know that a lot of GPs in my area here on the Central Coast do offer bulk billed sessions to do those referrals. Not all, but some. So you might just want to check with your GP surgery whether you would be charged for that consultation or whether that would be bulk billed. Now, the term bulk billing just means that Medicare cover the entire cost for that session rather than you having to pay a gap. Okay, so if your doctor bulk bills you, it means you don't have to pay anything out of pocket. Medicare pay your doctor directly a certain amount for that session. There are some counsellors who bulk bill. Now, it's important to understand you can't see any counsellor with a GP referral. They have to be accredited under Medicare. Okay, so you need to make sure if you have a person in mind that you want to see, you need to ask them, are you accredited under Medicare? Do you have a Medicare provider number so you can actually claim those rebates? Okay, otherwise it doesn't apply. So, for example, if someone was going to come and see me, their doctor might recommend that they see me and say, oh, I know, Alex, and she's over in Avoca Beach and you could see her, here's your referral and your care plan, and off they go. Or some people would go into their doctor and say, oh, I heard about Alex over in Avoca Beach. Can you do a referral for her? Okay, it can happen either way. If you have someone in mind, that's fine. If you don't, your doctor can recommend somebody who they've probably referred to quite a lot and had good feedback about. Now, when you come to, booking in with your counsellor, it's important to understand that not very many counsellors bulk bill. So what that means is that when you book in to see your counsellor, 99% of the time, there is going to be a gap payment, okay? So for example, if my clients come and see me and say they pay $150 to see me, Medicare will pay $76 of that $150 back to you, okay? So that's the rebate. So the gap fee is the difference between the rebate and the full fee, okay? So in that case, now I've got to do some maths. It's going to be like $74 gap, okay? So you, out of pocket, would be spending $74 per session. Somebody might want to check my maths. But say $74 per session out of pocket, right? And Medicare pay the rest. So obviously, you know, different counsellors charge different rates. You might find somebody who bulk bills, which means you don't have to pay any gap out of pocket. I used to do that because I, you know, run my business from home. But as my business grows, you know, unfortunately, it's just not enough for most counsellors to be able to pay their rent, employ staff, and, you know, do all the things they need to do. So you want to check that out with your counsellor. Also, some counsellors might say, okay, I offer bulk billing to some people. So for example, if you are you get a Centrelink payment, you have a healthcare card, then you might be eligible for your counsellor to bulk bill. So when you call up to book, or when you contact to book, you might want to ask them. You might say, look, I have a healthcare card, or do you offer any discounts? Do you do any gap-free bulk billing? And see what they say. Also, you know, like for me, I might charge more for an evening session or a Saturday session than a session during business hours. So that's something important to suss out as well. You might find that your counsellor has much cheaper sessions during business hours, during the week, right? Because we have families and often we like to see them. So, you know, our premium appointment times in the evenings and weekends are billed at a much higher rate. So you might want to ask them if money is an issue, see if you can get, you know, one of their daytime appointments, okay? So that's sort of the Medicare angle. Again, you're limited to those 10 sessions. So if you use up 10 sessions in a year, you can't get any more until the 1st of January the year after. Then you can get a whole nother 10. You go back to your doctor, you ask for some more, but once you use your 10 in the year, that's it. So I have clients, sometimes they'll use up their 10 and then they'll just go on to pay the full fee for the rest of the year if that's something that financially they can manage to do. So other options for payment that you may not be aware of. There is a really, really good program run through the Department of Justice through their Victim Support Service. And basically, if you have been a victim of a crime at any point in your life, you can apply for victims counselling. Now, that includes if in childhood you were a victim of abuse, for example, okay, that's a crime, and you could be eligible for counselling. Now, the victims counselling is completely gap-free. So if you get approved for that, you don't have to pay anything out of pocket, and they pay therapists pretty well. So I'm accredited under Victim Services. So again, you have to find a counsellor who's accredited through that program. So you'd ask your counsellor or the counsellor you're interested in, are you accredited under Victim Services? And they'll say yes or no. And if they are, then you can obviously use that approval. To apply for Victim Services, it's really easy. You just Google, victims of crime or Victims Counselling New South Wales. It'll lead you to, you follow the links onto an online form. It's an online application. It doesn't take very long. You don't need to have reported the crime at any point prior. There doesn't need to be any police involvement or anything like that. All you have to say is, this is what happened to me. There's two options where if you don't have a counsellor in mind who's accredited, you can ask Victim Services to allocate one for you, and they will choose somebody in your geographical area that's accredited, and they will refer you to them. If you have someone who you want to see, who you know is accredited, then there's a section where you put down their name as preferred counsellor, and then they will get your referral. Yeah. So, for example, if somebody comes and sees me, they might initially come and see me with a GP referral, and I might, be talking to them and find out that they've been a victim of a crime or a victim of abuse at some point in their life. Pretty common with my clients. And I'll say, hey, there's this other program where you could apply and you could get lots of sessions. So, Victim Services can approve up to 22 sessions, which is a really, really good amount. And they're a great service because they're really acknowledging that, trauma doesn't take 10 sessions to treat, right? Like, this is like really involved work. 22 sessions is a really, really good amount. And, at the completion of that, you can always ask for more if your therapist thinks that that's necessary and desirable. So It's a great program. Not many people know about it. If you want the link, or you want me to give you like clearer directions about how to get to that online form, send me a little message through my website or hit me up on social media, and I will send you the link. It's super easy. But if you Google Victim Services New South Wales, you'll see all those sort of links to the counselling section. Okay. So that's a really great program you might want to consider. Other things, so obviously some people have NDIS funding. NDIS is very complicated, but basically, so I'm not NDIS registered. I started to go through that process, and it was so time consuming and so expensive that it's not worth it for a small business like myself. So I can see people who are what we call self-managed. So they have NDIS approval for counselling sessions, and they can choose which counsellor they see, and they have an allocated amount of money, a pot of money that they can spend. And for those people, I will charge what the NDIS say a session costs. I think at the moment it's about $165 a session. And so that's what I will charge them, and then they get NDIS to reimburse them, right? So it doesn't change anything for me, but for them, they have that pot of money that they can use. But I don't see people who are managed by NDIS under a plan, which means NDIS has to pay the bills. You'd need to find a therapist who is NDIS approved. You'll usually find them in the big kind of therapy clinics, right? That program is really built around people who can afford to go through the auditing process and a whole bunch of other very expensive things. But you can, if you're self-managed, you can choose any therapist you want and basically just sort it out through them. Most of them will charge exactly what NDIS charge, the $165, but they might charge differently. You ask them. There are other different programs like work cover, employee assistance programs, veteran affairs. These all have counselling elements to them. Again, you'd want to check in your unique circumstances. They'll often have counsellors who they work with and who they refer to specifically. So you don't usually get to choose your counsellor so much under those programs, but you can certainly talk to your employer or Veterans Affairs about that sort of stuff. So it can all feel really overwhelming and complicated, all of this money stuff, but the good news is there are options, all right? If you're not sure, and if money is a real issue, and you have a counsellor in mind who you want to see, get in contact with them and talk through the options, okay? And they might need to ask you some questions about, okay, would you fit this criteria or that criteria? But they can at least talk you through the options and what they can provide. You could also talk to your GP. So most GPs are pretty good with knowing how to do GP referrals. And again, you might even just start to see somebody under a GP referral and then switch over to a different program if it's more suitable for you and gives you that more long-term therapy, all right? The final thing I'll say about money is, I've spoken to people sometimes who are like, oh no, I'm not willing to pay $50 a session out of pocket. It's not worth it. And I generally say to them, okay, that's cool, but how much do you spend on your gym membership, right? Or how much do you spend getting a massage? Or how much do you spend getting your hair done, right? We need to make it a priority, and it's not as simple as you get what you pay for, but anybody who's decent is probably going to be charging a fee that reflects their expertise, their years of study, their years of experience, and should be money really well spent. I understand, there are some people charging, crazy amounts of money for sessions, and I don't think you should assume that if you're paying a lot of money, you're getting the best person. But, if you know that somebody's good, if you hear good things about them, really think about, this is an investment in my mental health, in my emotional well-being. That's a pretty important thing. And you know, maybe I can spare that $50 a fortnight, or maybe I can spare that $75 a fortnight. Maybe that's money well spent if in 3 months from now or 6 months from now, I actually feel phenomenally better. So I hope that's helpful. If you guys have other questions about money and funding and all that sort of stuff, send me a message. I'm happy to answer them. I know it's an area that can be very confusing. All right, I'll check you later.